fun for you, right? Um, like Chuck said, and thank you again to Howie as well for controlling all the kind of the Wizard of Oz back there controlling all of this. I'm really excited to be here. Like Chuck said, this is really my first time publicly sharing it. I did do a podcast for IANS Radio with Lee Whitting about 2 weeks ago, and that was really my first chance within 30 minutes to share my story. So since then, the support has been incredible. I've gotten to meet a lot of people just within this last couple of weeks, really in the last couple of months. So I'm going to share just a quick little bit about myself. It's like the first day of school for those of you who have not gotten to know me yet. And I promise that if it seems like I'm digressing, I will tie it all together. The point of this, obviously, is for me to share my story for really, again, first time, or if we want to be technical, the second time. But really, to hopefully help veterans across the world, not just U.S. veterans, hopefully help maybe somebody who's been grieving, or somebody who knows somebody in the military. So that's kind of the point why I felt like I would hopefully be here and hopefully help somebody. So yeah, I'll get started. So thank you again, Chuck and Howie. My name's Chase. I was born and raised here in Orlando, Florida. I actually get to live now. We just bought a house last year, almost a year ago. Perfect time to buy a house right before a pandemic starts. But we bought a house where in my backyard, I can literally see the schools that I grew up going to. So really cool. My grandparents raised me, big family. They've actually adopted children from Korea. I have a Black brother. I have two Korean sisters, a Korean brother. Myself, not as exciting, obviously. But just a really incredible family. My parents were incredibly supportive of all of us, and they do come from a military background. So my father served in the Army. My grandmother's father served in World War II in Iwo Jima and Guadalcanal. So there is a military background for me. And ever since, I would say about seventh grade, that was when I was truly drawn to join the military. Right here at the school, again in my backyard, there was a poster for ROTC to start at seventh grade. Normally it starts in middle school. And if you're not familiar with ROTC, it's kind of like a precursor to what to expect in the military, and it's part of school activities. So I joined that, not really knowing what I was getting myself into. And sure enough, I took to it right away. I loved it. I love the discipline. As crazy as it sounds, if there's military people on here, you kind of enjoy, them shouting at you. It's kind of comical. So really just really drawn to join the military at a really young age. And it's something that my parents always, talked about. They didn't force it on us. I'm the only one in my immediate family that joined the military. And so I always joke, I always say, my two older brothers is kind of like Goldilocks and the Three Bears. It just happened to be just right for me. So sure enough, so I'll get to that. And so I wanted to share again, that was kind of like my real quick life recap there. Throughout life, I've always felt very fortunate, very lucky. I've always felt like things happened for me in the end. There's obviously struggles that everybody goes through, but I always feel like if I maintain and I'm a good person, that things would work out, right? And there wasn't too much spiritual, mindset to that, more than just a believer in karma. I did grow up Catholic. We grew up going to a Catholic church not too far away from here, and my parents used to bribe me with a McDonald's sausage biscuit if I behaved well, which was not too common, but they would still give me the sausage biscuit if I behaved. So I went to church, and we stopped going, I would say, around middle school age. So I got baptized, I got my confirmation. Why that's relevant to the story is you'll find out here in just a few minutes. So as soon as I left high school, I was, Mr. ROTC, Mr. Military. I was going to serve 20 years in the military. I had posters all around my wall. It's all I wore to school was, Air Force t-shirts. And I was drawn to the Air Force. I had an Air Force recruiter. His name is Stacy Baker here in Orlando. And he said, when you get out of the military, do you want to brag to your children about being tough, or do you want to brag to them about being educated and have a degree and things like that? And I was sold. I said, you know what, this is a mature moment for me. I'm going to go join the Air Force, because before that, I wanted to be in the Army. I wanted to be in the Marines. I wanted to get dirty. I wanted to, go out and be a hero. But sure enough, he found a job for me called SERE. It's SERE. It's Survival, Evasion, Resistance, and Escape. And it's I would say it's technically an Air Force Green Beret. And how he described it was a tough Boy Scout, essentially, for the Air Force, where we would train flight crew, essentially, how to survive in the wild, kind of like, Man vs. Wild, the TV show. So I was set. I was ready. Told all my friends goodbye. Broke up with my girlfriend. Sold my car. I was out of here. I was leaving Orlando, and I was never coming back unless my parents were going to send me food for Christmas or something. And sure enough, after just a couple of months, I got injured. But to kind of go back for a second, in the Air Force and in the military in general, it's very easy to get kicked out, right? It's very easy for medical reasons, for behavioral reasons, to leave the military. I had I won't share his name, I wrote it down here, but I'm not going to say it. Gentleman, while we were on fire watch, which is, everybody takes an hour turn each night, kind of walking around the barracks in basic training. The purpose to it really is to see if you can wake up in the middle of the night and function, for an hour and go back to bed. So a lot of military people did not enjoy it too much, but there was one, airman in training who had a sleepwalking problem. He didn't know it. And so a lot of us witnessed, this kid sleepwalking in the middle of the night, and he would just stand up and put his full uniform on, stand next to his bed, and would just kind of chat and whisper to himself, and then take his uniform off and go back into bed. And it was the first time for me that I had ever witnessed somebody really sleepwalking like that. And sure enough, the instructors found out, and we never saw him again. They sent him home, and they said that it was too much of a risk. There's another gentleman about a week later who got kicked out of the Air Force as well before he could really even get in. Every week we would get instructed to fold our clothing perfectly. A t-shirt had to be perfect. There couldn't be a crease in the shirt, and they would come inspect it. And if the inspection was bad, they would tear open the clothes, and you'd have to start all over again. Really stressful. But if you take your time and do it right, it wasn't the end of the world. Well, this kid thought it would be a good idea to pass one time with the perfectly folded clothing, and then he would put all of his clean clothes in his dirty hamper. So what would happen was he would just take all of his clean clothes out of the hamper, so he'd never have to fold it again. Therefore, he wouldn't fail his inspection. Sure enough, they caught him. They opened up his hamper, smelt his clothes, and found out that he indeed was lying or cheating, and they sent him home. It was tough to watch, but in that kind of time frame, when you're young and you're in basic training, you just, it's something is startling, and then you move on. My point is it's very easy to get kicked out of the military. There's not just medical reasons, there's reasons like flat foot, asthma, things that they can't catch before you leave for the military. So kind of the point of this chat is to explain why somebody would keep it a secret if they had a near-death experience. If somebody had this remarkable experience, or for some, unfortunately, a less than remarkable experience, why you might not share it. Because obviously mental health in the military is important if you're deployed, and if somebody thinks you're crazy, they're not going to let you stay. So I wanted to share that with you all, and just kind of start that way. So I got hurt while I was in SEER school pretty early on, which was really unfortunate. And, I just thought my life was just going to kind of cave in. This was what I was going to be. I told everybody that I was going to be this, incredible hero and go save the world. And I injured my knee. It wasn't too big of a knee problem. Unfortunately, when they did the knee surgery, it kind of got a little bit worse. So the doctor who performed the surgery may have messed up the knee surgery a little bit. We'll just put it that way. But while I was in rehab, I saw a poster on the base in Texas, and this was in Lackland Air Force Base, Texas, that Mark Bowden, the writer of Black Hawk Down, Gates of the Ayatollah, quite a few books, but Black Hawk Down was one of my favorite movies growing up. I was obsessed with that movie in high school, watched it a ton of times, and thought, I'm going to be that guy. So I snuck out. I said I had a medical appointment, and I got on my crutches, and I went to an autograph signing on base for Mark Bowden. And he saw me on my crutches, and I kind of, scooted up to him, and he said, "Oh, what happened to you?" And I said, "Well, I got hurt in SEER school, and I don't know what's going to go on. I don't know what's happening." Kind of opened up and kind of gave him my life story for some reason. And he said, "Well, what do you want to do now?" I said, I don't know. My high school English teacher said that I was a good writer in my senior year, so maybe I can be a writer for the Air Force. And he said, oh, that's really interesting. What's your name? And he actually wrote it. I know it's not show and tell, but I just wanted to show you all. I got his autograph here, and on the back page, he actually wrote his email address. Now, 2 weeks later, they allow you to pick your next job in the Air Force if you get injured, kind of doing a special forces training. They call it a dream sheets because they say that you have to be dreaming if you think you're going to get your top choice. And, it's kind of a funny thing that they use. But they, sure enough, I put writer at the top. I put photographer. I put graphic designer, things that, a lot of people don't realize exist, in the Air Force. And sure enough, I got a knock on the door one morning. I was passed out sleeping, and they said, you have 4 hours to get to Baltimore. You're going to journalism school. So pretty incredible. At the time, you're young and you just think, oh, this is great. This is how it's supposed to happen. But along the way, there's been a lot of people that have helped me get to this point, and maybe I didn't exactly take advantage or realize, what was happening. So sure enough, a couple of years later, by the way, I did email Mark Bowden, and I asked him if he had ever put in a good word for me, and he kind of didn't respond. He just said, I'm glad to see you're doing well, which I thought was incredible. And so, shout out to Mark Bowden. So sure enough, I'm at journalism school. I get through, graduate, get to pick my base. I go to Langley Air Force Base in Virginia Beach. I thought for me, it's right in the middle of the country on the coast, not too hot, not too cold. Didn't think that there was snow. So I was at Langley Air Force Base for quite a while. Unfortunately, the knee surgery that didn't go as planned just continued to kind of cause an issue. I knew that at my age, the Air Force at some point was going to say, you can't deploy, so you're not too good to us right now. And that time started slowly coming in 2008, towards the beginning of the year. So I was a little stressed, a little bit worried, didn't know what I was going to do. I think I was 19 at the time, 20 years old. So there was a lot of nerves and a little chip on my shoulder, like this was supposed to be my life. This was supposed to be the Air Force. I'm going to do this forever. And so that's kind of where it was going. But because of that, I started showing up late for work. Didn't take it too seriously. I thought, what are they going to do? They're going to kick me out, And in the Air Force, in the military in general, it doesn't really go too well. So I was showing up late. Supervisor and I started butting heads, and one morning she thought she was going to catch me late for work, and sure enough, she found me passed out on my dorm room floor. I was completely healthy, by the way. I was in great shape despite the knee surgery, and obviously wasn't drinking. I was still young, wasn't doing drugs, of course, in the military, and was staying in shape. But she did find me on the dorm room floor. She had a key to the dorm, and so they sent me to the hospital, and propped me up, put me in the furthest room away, and at the end of the hall. They started running tests on me, connected me to vitals, gave me an IV. They wanted to do a spinal tap to see if I had hit my head when I had passed out. They had asked me questions about, how did you pass out? What did you do? They started trying to, develop a story or, a hypothesis, if you will. And they said, your vitals are pretty good. So we don't really know what happened. Maybe you just, fell over and whatever, and kind of, started to feel like they wanted me to get out of, taking that bed. So the nurse kind of played with my IV a little bit, and she said, we're going to go get a mobile chest x-ray and we'll be right back. When she left the room, that's where really the story begins. As soon as she left the room, and I can still remember everybody's faces, the alarm started to sound. Never been in that situation before, never really had too many medical issues as a kid. So alarm starting to sound was, terrifying, but in that state, where you're kind of laying there, you don't have time to react. So one by one, the nurse comes sprinting in, kind of running across, almost bouncing into the end of the hallway into the wall. And you can just see the confusion on her face. And sure enough, another doctor runs in, a nurse runs in. And before I realize it, there's something really going wrong here. So next thing that kind of happened was, as all of this kind of confusion, and it really was, for me, somebody who didn't grow up in a medical field, it really felt like something out of a TV show or a movie. You know, they're shouting medical terms at each other, looking at each other, looking at my vitals. The screen was over to my left, and somebody on my left-hand side started petting my arm. And this was a gentleman, right? And at that age, it's, you wouldn't want, military kid, I didn't want some guy stroking my arm and petting me, but it was the best feeling. If you think of somebody scratching your back or just kind of consoling you, it was just complete comfort on my left hand arm. So I try to turn my head over and look, and I actually feel somebody kind of stop me, and they don't want me to look over to my left. And sure enough, I kind of hear this calming, booming voice, but calming voice. And now when I think back, and now as I share the story, I realize I heard somebody so calmly talking to me on my left-hand side while people kind of directly over me are screaming and shouting at each other, trying to figure out what's going on as the alarms are going and everything's beeping. So the voice to the left of me says, "This is really going to hurt. There's air traveling up your vein, and it's going to go to your heart, and it's going to be very painful, but everything's going to be okay." Sorry. So I try to turn over and look again, and he stops me. And he says, "Don't look over here." I said, "Okay." And I feel for me personally, it was the worst pain that I've ever felt in my life. I've had teeth knocked out, I've had stitches, typical guy, I've hit my head a million times, but the most awful pain that you could imagine, I would describe it as a silver bullet traveling up your veins to your heart. And my right leg kind of kicks up, and I'm watching the nurses and the doctors look over me, and they're watching me die. And to realize that is profound, obviously. So sure enough, as that pain kind of starts to travel further up and it gets kind of the crease of my arm, one more time, I try to look over to my left and feel, it's kind of somebody's holding my hand and also kind of stroking me. And it just feels so calming and so good. And I look over to my left all the way, and all I see is the monitor go completely flat. And I died. So, by the way, if I'm laughing, that's just how I handle emotion. Don't know if that's the military or just, my upbringing. So I died. And in that moment, it was the most beautiful feeling of, if I could describe it better, it would be a ice cold bath coming from my heart. I would describe it as light, but it felt cold and beautiful and just comforting, kind of just come into my heart, almost like a like my heart's opening up. If anybody knows any of the Iron Man movies, it felt like that. And I began to travel upwards, and I watched the nurses and the doctors just kind of, just complete confusion as to what was going on as they looked over me at my lifeless body. As I began traveling up, I get goosebumps. Just the most beautiful feeling of, some people might describe it as a tunnel, but for me, it felt like there were just these little angels or fairies or, like wind chimes. And it just felt like I was kind of moving my body upwards to this just incredible light. It's so hard to describe to somebody who maybe hasn't had a positive near-death experience, because it was the most beautiful feeling that you could ever describe. I think if you could bottle up even 1/100th of that feeling every day, I think everybody would wake up really happy. So as I'm traveling up, it's just this beautiful sound of, again, wind chimes, and just, you kind of hear laughter and just happiness, exuding happiness as my body goes upwards. Before I knew it, my feet were planted, and I was in this incredible garden. It was filled with, things that we would see here, but with colors that don't exist here. The greens were green, really green, and the yellows were really yellow, and the red on some of the plants and flowers were really red and very purple. And I could feel the dirt on my feet. And this was real. Felt more real than us talking right now. I mean, it was very real that my feet were planted in the dirt. And up ahead, I saw um, a gentleman in a robe playing with this little kid, maybe 3, 4 years old, kind of running ahead. And I say cheeky kid. My wife's Australian, so she uses the word cheeky a lot. And this kid was up to no good. He was kind of looking back at the man in the robe and running away, and kind of trotting along like he was going to get away from him. And before I knew it, I don't remember walking there. I don't remember floating there. But before I knew it, I was kind of right there. I described it in the podcast as kind of like Charles Dickens' story of A Christmas Carol, where you're kind of watching the Christmas, the ghost of Christmas Past, in a sense of I'm sitting there watching something happen right in front of me that they couldn't see me, I thought. And as I watch this gentleman and the kid playing, I start to kind of laugh, and I go, wow, this is really nice. This kid is really, he's happy. He's having a good time. He's laughing. He's continues to kind of run away and looking back. And the man in the robe kind of turns his head to me. And at that moment, there was no doubt in my mind that Jesus was right there in front of me. It was, I would say that if you had asked me at that moment when I died, who are you going to meet in heaven? I probably would have jokingly said Elvis. I'm very fortunate that in my life I've not yet lost a lot of really close loved ones. I'm very fortunate for that. So, I don't think I would have said at that moment in my life that I was going to come face to face with Jesus if I died. So he looks over at me, and it's almost like our conversation was predetermined. It was almost like he was reminding me, like we had talked a week earlier, going, hey, so it's you can't stay here. It's kind of time for you to go back. And I kind of looked over and I just agreed. There was no argument of I really want to stay. It was really kind of like, yeah, I know we talked about this. That was the feeling that I had, was this was all just this was all determined ahead of time, and I'm just coming up here to visit, like a little mini vacation. I realized, looking at the boy again, that it's me. The little boy had these tight little blonde curls, almost like a mullet. And when I think of myself as a little kid, I don't think of myself that way. I have dark brown hair now. But in my baby pictures, and probably up until I was about 5 or 6 years old, I had really blonde, curly hair. And of course, my parents put me in a mullet because this was, 1990, and that was popular. And I realize I'm looking at myself running around up there with Jesus, and he kind of looked back over at the child and looked back over at me, and he said, I want you to remember to bring back laughter, joy, love, and light. And those words continue to stick with me. And as he said that, I kind of remember kind of agreeing and going, absolutely, of course. This conversation was all meant to be, and this was where I was supposed to be at that time. There was no fear, and before I can really say anything else to him, I remember waking back up. And if you've ever had a really amazing dream in your life and you try to open up your eyes, you wake up in the morning and you go, oh, please, let me close my eyes for just one more second and let me just finish that dream. Like, just give me another minute, right? And it didn't work. And I closed my eyes again and opened them, closed my eyes and opened them. And I just wanted that feeling back, because the feeling of coming back into my body, it's heavy, gravity, the light, all of that amazing, incredible feeling had kind of gone away by then. A nurse had come into the room and she wasn't wearing her military uniform. And so I kind of thought, okay. And then, she said she was going to get somebody. And sure enough, the doctor comes in a regular, ER coat. And he said, hey, how are you feeling? And I don't really remember the conversation too much, about just really saying, I feel really good. I'm just a little tired, obviously confused. And I realized that I wasn't on the military base anymore. I was actually in Hampton, Virginia, off base at another hospital. So it appears that the Air Force didn't really want to pronounce me dead on base, and had sent me to the civilian base. So I'm not sure. I believe I took an ambulance there. I don't think I was lifted up by helicopter. Uh, and so I didn't know how much time had passed. And the plan was they were going to release me because Hampton, Virginia is very close. It's really borders Langley Air Force Base. They were going to release me. A friend was going to come pick me up and take me back to the Air Force Base, and I was going to readmit myself back to the hospital. Called my friend and I said, I just died and I'm craving Chick-fil-A. If Chick-fil-A doesn't sponsor IANS, by the way, they really should. And that was my first thought. My friend said, okay, let's come get you. And sure enough, they came and got me, and we went to Chick-fil-A, which is right down the road. And we went back to the base, and I did not turn myself back in. I went to Facebook, as everybody my age would do, and I told everybody on Facebook that I had flatlined, but I wanted to come back because I was hungry. So that was my first real opportunity to share such a beautiful experience, and I decided not to. Instead, I thought I'd make a joke out of it. Instead, I thought, let me just kind of brush it under the rug. I'm going to tell everybody I died, but that was it, and stop right there. The fear of anybody, somebody judging me, even my friends at the time, they believed that I died. I had the bracelet on, and I didn't want to share that with them at that moment because I thought, I need to process this. I really need to think of what just happened to me before I can tell anybody else. Because if I just say it, I might lose these friends. They might think, I'm crazy. So we went out of town. We went to Washington, D.C. for the weekend and came back. And I actually went back to the hospital, turned myself back in, and they did every heart test you can imagine, Holter monitors, EKGs, ultrasounds, and they found nothing wrong with my heart at all. Really didn't make sense to me. How something like that could happen. And then all of a sudden, my heart is the most healthy heart imaginable. And so then I really thought, well, how can I tell somebody this? If my heart's completely healthy, how do you move forward? So I went back to the hospital another week later, try to get the results. My left arm was completely black and blue from the air traveling up my vein. I didn't really get to that part, but they believe it was an air embolism. So air traveled up my vein on accident and traveled up to my heart and put me in cardiac arrest. I place no blame on the Air Force. I feel like it was meant to be. It was supposed to happen. And so for quite a long time, I just thought, I've been given this second chance. I've been given this new opportunity to come back, but what do I do with it? Who do I tell? Who am I supposed to make laugh? You really start questioning, and it's not like you can go back and say, can you give me a couple, more pointers? Can you give me some more clarity of what you want me to do with this incredible experience? So that was April 1st, 2008. And by July 18th, 2008, I was out of the Air Force. They gave me 40 days notice. They gave me actual medical retirement for my knee. Now, military people go, you got retired for a knee surgery? And I said, yeah. And they go, But now thinking back, maybe it wasn't just my knee that they retired me for. So those medical records are still missing as we do this. I requested April 1st and April 2nd medical records, and for some reason they can't be found. By the way, when I did post on Facebook that I had died, I did realize it was April 2nd. So to give some clarity there, I went to the hospital April 1st is when they found me in my dorm room, and I had flatlined, and April 2nd is when I woke up the next day that I remember. Now I don't have any records to go off of, so I don't know if maybe it opened my eyes before then, but to the best of my knowledge, that was my first memory returning back to my body, was a full day and a half later. So, got out of the Air Force and I had no clue what I was going to do. 40 days notice. I told everybody back here home in Orlando, I was not coming back. I was a military guy for life. So pride got the best of me, and I thought, I'm going to stay here in Virginia. I'm going to figure it out, but what am I going to do? And I auditioned for a TV, to be the face of a local TV show there, or face of a local TV network. And in getting to do that, I got this incredible opportunity from, being a military guy, where a lot of military people struggle transitioning from the military to get out. And immediately I got to do a lot of really cool stuff. And so as part of my near-death experience, obviously spreading laughter, love, joy, light, um, I really, in the back of my head, made it my goal to do everything that I maybe thought looked cool, everything that I maybe thought looked fun at the time. Um, so for example, when I was younger, I thought breakdancing was really cool. There was no, especially how I grew up and where I grew up, I don't know if there was any breakdancing schools around, but I learned how to breakdance because I thought, hey, I thought it was cool when I was young, let's try it. Um, Friends had told me when I was younger, oh, you should be a stand-up comedian. And so I put myself in stand-up comedy classes and I got to actually headline at the Virginia Beach Funny Bone. And once I did that, I kind of said, I did it. I'm happy. I can prove that I've done it. I grew up just absolutely loving music. And I would confidently say more than most people. Everybody loves music, but music really has been my coping mechanism for my whole life. My nanny, my grandmother, she's just such a music fanatic and kind of put that on all of us kids. And so I said, you know what? I remember I went to a nightclub and the DJ was really rude because I wanted to make a request, probably a terrible one. And I said, you know what? I want to learn how to be a DJ. So sure enough, I became a DJ and I started DJing in nightclubs. And through that, I started working at radio stations. I got to announce for two local minor league teams, the Norfolk Admirals and the Norfolk Tides, a baseball and hockey team. I got to be their on-field guy. So I was coming from the military. I had a really incredible, some would say luck. I would typically say luck, but I think it was a little bit more. And I think that people hopefully listening realize that there is more than just luck out there and saved up karma. There's always something more to pick up on these things. And I was very blessed to have that opportunity that a lot of military people, when they get out of the military, they don't know what they're going to do. A lot of their jobs don't translate over. So I was living it up. I was enjoying myself. And in the back of my head, it was always regret nothing, do what I want to do, figure it out. If I can't pay rent this month, it might destroy my credit, but I'm doing something fun. And I didn't let that bother me. And I think that's, a lot of young people's mentalities either way. But I really, really made it an effort to, if I ever had to go back, or if it really was the next time something like that might happen to me and I don't get to travel back to my body, can I look back and go, I had a really good time. I had a lot of fun. Through that time, I shared it with a couple of, I shared it with a couple of friends that I thought, now that they know me well enough, they're not going to think I'm crazy. So I can share that story with them. I had an ex-girlfriend, two ex-girlfriends, throughout that kind of 7-year time frame that I shared it with, the closer we got. And, they believed me, but I never thought to look it up. I didn't know that it was called a near-death experience. I never thought to search it, didn't know anything about INs. I just shared it with a couple of people and they said, wow, that's beautiful. And that was really it. So I got an opportunity to go work for Carnival Cruise Lines. And I got to meet my wife there from Australia, Sarah. And I got to really just perform and entertain for sometimes 3,000 new people every 5 days that would come on the cruise ship. And it was such an amazing experience to be able to spread laughter, spread joy, spread light, kind of stand up there on the pool deck and just do everything I could to make people laugh. And, I always took it very seriously that some of these people save, life savings to go on vacation for just a few days. And I want to make sure that I'm part of that. I want to make their experience amazing. So I'm sitting up talking to my grandmother one day and on the phone. We're normally out at sea for 7 months at a time and then back for maybe 4 weeks. And I get off the phone with her and a tall gentleman, can vividly picture him. Hadn't seen him earlier on the cruise, didn't see him after. He handed me a book that was about near-death experiences. All he did was stand up out on the pool deck and walked by me and said, I think you should have this book, and disappeared. Never saw him again. And I kept the book and I purposely didn't read it. And it might surprise a lot of people. Why didn't you read it? Why, this gentleman gave you this book for a reason. You should have at least respected him to read the book. But it sits next to me every single day in my office at work. It's called In Life and Death He Leads by Bruce Blair. and it's about near-death experiences. And I made a conscious choice not to read it because I knew that when I was ready to share my story, I wanted to share it from me, and I didn't want any other influences. I didn't want to read somebody else's books or anything like that. But then this book taught me that there's other people out here that have had this experience, and I just reading the front and the back of the book taught me that that there are these experiences out there. If anybody's familiar with the show Duck Dynasty, they actually rented out the cruise ship for a week. And at the time, my wife and I, we bought the DVDs and watched them on the ship so we can really, enjoy them being on the cruise ship with all of their fans. And the oldest brother is a pastor. And so we learned that through the show. And I told his, agent or person that was kind of helping him out that week, I said, if I get a chance to talk to him privately, can I just, can you let me know when? I just want a few minutes to share something with him. And she said, it'll be tough, but, I'm sure, they were all very nice. So I'm sure we can make that happen. And my wife was with me, not my wife at the time. So she was my girlfriend. And, I shared the experience with her, obviously, in detail. And she stayed with me, which was great. So we had an opportunity to talk to him, and I got to pull him aside, and I said, look, I feel drawn to tell you this story about me dying and meeting Jesus. And I don't know what to do with this story. I don't know what, but I kind of just let it all pour out on him within just, really 3 minutes time while we're stopped somewhere on the cruise ship. And I think I caught him off guard, and he was incredibly nice. And he just kind of said, you'll know when it's time. Don't put pressure on you. And that was it. And snapped a picture with him and moved on. So I took it as, something's going to hit me in the head. And I'm stubborn, so I was waiting literally for maybe an anvil to fall like the Looney Tunes and hit me in the head to say, okay, now you should tell everybody. So I got off the cruise ship. I started working for Disney, had an incredible time working for Disney, performing again, similar job, getting to make kids laugh, getting to make parents laugh. And I really felt like I was in my element. I was really making people have fun and getting to be myself to do it. I took a job in radio after Disney, and I figured, it's time to, I thought get a grown-up job, right? We all struggle, with our grown-up jobs. I would say if if you grew up and you wanted to be, a ballerina your whole life, and now you're, an accountant, go back and take ballerina school, go back and take a dance class. There's things you can do at home now with all the technology out there. Just, I would encourage everybody listening to live out something that you wanted to do when you're a kid, because it's going to bring back so many great memories. And so that's what I wanted to keep doing. But I did want to settle down and buy a house and with my now wife, Sarah. And so I thrived. I did very good at my job. It was a desk job for the most part, but I got to be around people, and I got to, I feel like, help people. And then comes Wounded Warrior Project. It's a veteran service organization, much like Disabled American Veterans, American Legion, USO. There's a lot of incredible organizations out there that help veterans. Wounded Warrior Project, I felt a connection to, and I kept applying for about 1.5 years to get accepted to this program. It's called Project Odyssey, and it's 5 days in person and then 12 weeks after, and they help people with all sorts of stress, PTSD, stress triggers, really a mental health retreat. And in my head, full disclosure, I thought it was going to be a free vacation. I looked it up online, and you get to go sometimes whitewater rafting, you get to go and sleep in cabins. And I thought, I'm going to take a 5-day vacation and just enjoy myself. I didn't really think anything after the fact of what I might get out of it. I finally got accepted. And I say finally because it was the right time for me to get accepted. And I disappeared for 5 days. We went to St. Augustine, and it was with, I believe, 11 other veterans. I believe there's 12 of us and 3 counselors, and just had an incredible time. The vacation side of it went away when I realized how many veterans are struggling, like myself. Their instructor, one of the instructors there named Carlos, who I keep in touch with now. This was just past October, by the way. This was really just 3-4 months ago. He talked to us about the beach ball effect. And it's when you have a beach ball and you're in the pool, and when he was a little kid, he would try to shove that beach ball underneath the water and submerge it. But no matter how strong he was, no matter how old he got, the beach ball came flying back up, and you can only push it down so much. And that's what a lot of people in the military do. We suppress feelings, we move on fast. If something's affecting you, if something's hurting you, if something's upsetting you, whether it's external wounds or it's internal wounds, you push that beach ball down and you don't let it come back up. We all have a mission, no matter what the mission is. If you're a graphic designer or if you're somebody on the front lines, is your job is to push those feelings down and do the job that you've been training to do. So they said, let the beach ball out, release the beach ball, if you will. And that's kind of what we did for those 5 days. Was we had a lot of fun and we worked on coping mechanisms, on, don't try to push that beach ball down, let it out and acknowledge it. Why do you want to push the beach ball down? And it was an incredible experience. I was the last person to leave that Friday in St. Augustine. I didn't want to leave. Everybody checked out of the hotel. Everybody said bye. We gave our hugs. It was emotional. Some of us cried. I cried. I'm not too ashamed to admit it, because I came very, very close with these people. Anybody who's ever lived close with somebody, like in the military or on a cruise ship, you can really get to know people very quickly within 5 days, where they almost feel like family. So it was an incredible time. I came back that Friday night and my wife said, you've come back a completely different person. You've come back so free and you just feel lighter, like, you just seem happy. And I said, this was just a life-changing experience for me and I can't wait to tell you more about it. Within the next 3 days, things really changed fast for me. I found out that I had a sister that I had never known about. She actually took a DNA test and they had been trying to find me a beautiful another half of my family that I'd never gotten to know my entire life. They found me within a day of coming back from that retreat. Had they found me a month earlier, I might not have responded, but thanks to this retreat, I was mentally ready to just handle stress better and to cope, and it was incredible. And so that next Monday, they assign you a counselor through Cornerstone is the name of the company. And I get a counselor and she's asking me the questions. The first meeting is, I'm just going to ask you kind of about your life story. And then, the second meeting will actually go into, kind of focusing on your goals for mental health, for the next 12 weeks. While she's asking me, these questions and I'm answering her, she puts her pencil down, her pen down, and she goes, can I ask you something? I said, yes. She goes, did you have a near-death experience? And immediately I burst out into tears. Nobody has ever asked me, nobody has ever asked me if I've had a near-death experience before. Nobody has ever said that something profound happened to you while you were in the military. Nobody's ever confronted that. I've only had the opportunity to maybe share it with 7 to 10 people at that time. And I, burst into tears and I got myself together and I said, yes, I did. And she, did just a little grin and she said, okay, we have a lot to talk about, I think. And I said, yes, yes, we do. Like, how did you know? And it turns out her husband had a near-death experience. And so our session ended and I was like, I want to talk to her. Can she call me back? I want to talk to her for another hour. I was like, it just opened up this, something that beach ball that I've held down for, at that time, 12 years. So got off the phone with her, the Zoom call with her, and immediately I searched near-death experiences and I found IANS. I found the website for IANS. I found a Facebook group immediately. I joined, I think, 3 of them right away. This was all within an hour of getting off that call with her. I immediately posted as soon as I was accepted to the Facebook group. I said, does anybody know any other veterans that have had a near-death experience? I have tons of questions. And somebody, people started to comment and somebody said, watch this YouTube video. And I think you'll enjoy it. And if you want, you can skip ahead to the 24th minute, I think they said. So I clicked on the video and it was a video of Dr. Diane Corcoran, which I think a lot of you might know. If not, I highly recommend you look her up. And it was her sitting, doing a conference talking about how veterans are, incredibly likely to have these near-death experiences, but have to keep it to themselves in a sense, or at least they think they do. and it changed me. And I thought, oh my gosh, I've got to find her. I've got to reach out to her. And sure enough, I did. I looked up her email, I read her website, and I reached out, and I kind of just did a quick, I've been looking for you my whole life and I didn't realize it. And she connected me with Lilia as well. And I think a lot of people know Lilia. So Diane and Lilia Samoilo, they've been absolutely incredible. Their life work is to helping veterans with their near-death experience, active duty. The focus so much is on veterans because it's very hard, obviously, to talk to active duty military. We're so protected while we're on base, or deployed, where it's just not as easy to find these resources. But got in touch with them, and immediately they started helping me and sending me resources. Within that same week, just everything in me changed. I feel like, I think Lee Whitting in our podcast kind of made a joke that I had come out of the spiritual closet, in a sense, something that I had kept to myself for so long. So I started to really kind of trace back and connect the dots back and realize that all these things that had been happening to me, from Mark Bowden to getting, opportunities, even me hurting myself in the first place, that all of these things happen for a reason. Finding, this book, on the cruise ship, and then talking to the gentleman from Duck Dynasty and all these things. And I thought, why now? I continually told my wife periodically, maybe every few months or every year, I'd go, I was given such an amazing opportunity to come back into my body. I had such an incredible experience. I'm wasting it. What am I doing? Like, is somebody upset at me that I'm not using my opportunity to come back? Am I disappointing somebody? Am I disappointing my spirit around me? What am I doing? Why did this happen, and why am I not taking advantage of it? And going on that retreat was my sign. It was obviously an incredible opportunity, and it was life-changing. And again, from meeting my sister to another entire side of my family, to meeting Diane and Lilia. And then I also met who I would call a mentor. Her name's Diana Bamford. She's been incredible. She's been able to help me kind of figure out what I'm feeling. Because when people come out of a near-death experience or out-of-body experience, and I know that there's other ones that I'm not familiar with yet, I'm still very new to this world. When they come out of that, they come out with a lot of joy, and then they realize that they're back into the real world. And maybe some of the things that they've experienced, they can't share with people, of course, which is very disappointing, but understandable. Excuse me. So, I mentioned, kind of chasing the light, obviously, of being able to enjoy myself, the Wounded Warrior Project, Diane, Lilia, and then everybody at IANS. I joined IANS that day as well, after I joined the Facebook group, and there was actually a conference, and I met, a voice came on while I was still working, Peter Panagore, and I heard his voice, and I thought, whoa, who's this guy? All it was a voice. So I click over and I look at the video, and he's talking, and I got in touch with him right away. And I said, I'm going through all these things now, what should I do? And he's been, an incredible light for me as well. So it's just been an amazing experience, I would say. And that was all really within a week of coming back. So you can imagine the whirlwind of emotions of, okay, this is very real. I'm not alone. And what would have happened if I would have shared this sooner? What would have happened if I knew about this sooner? So it's a lot happened. And so, before we get to questions, and I'm looking forward, I think I see a couple of dots there for questions. What I do want to say is just a couple of things. Obviously there's resources out there. For those of you that have served in the military, hopefully the resources. IANS is the first place I would go. Contacting Diane, contacting Lilia. I put on my personal website. I have nothing to gain. I don't put ads up there, so I don't get paid off of clicks, but my website is easy to remember, and I have a lot of resources listed for veterans. So if you know of a veteran, if you know somebody actively serving, I highly, highly encourage you, just store this story, hopefully in a small piece, in the back of your brain, And hopefully at some point of your life, you'll hear another veteran or somebody in the military sharing something, and you'll say, you know what, this guy Chase was actually sharing something, and I watched it once. So my website is Chase Skylar, ChaseSkylar. There's chaseskylar.com. If you click near death experience, it's the first link. I do have a list of how to get a hold of Diane, Lilia, obviously how to join IANS, how to get a hold of Diana Bamford, and then a couple of other veteran stories like Bill McDonald and more. So before we close out, I just want to say, obviously answer any questions, but my goal here is obviously my focus is veterans. I do want to share a couple of numbers with you all. These are kind of sad numbers, so I don't want to end on a sad note. So hopefully we can bring it back, Chuck, and make people laugh again. But according to the Veterans Brain Injury Center, there's nearly 404,000 traumatic brain injuries. So, concussions is another term that people might use if you're not familiar. More than 185 veterans who use the VA for healthcare have been diagnosed with a traumatic brain injury. In 2007, more than half of those medically evacuated from Iraq and Afghanistan in the current battle that we're in had cardiovascular chief complaints. So I bring that up because such a one of the leading reasons to have a near-death experience are cardiac arrest or traumatic brain injury. Those numbers are staggering. 185,000, and then you look at 20% of combat soldiers complain of heart pain and could go unconscious, without us even realizing it. Operation Enduring Freedom, as of right now, these numbers have been updated just a little bit ago, sadly, and this is just in our current conflict. 40,298 wounded in action and 5,350 killed in action. I bring up those sad numbers to realize that veterans or active duty military people are constantly injured. We don't ask for sympathy. This is a job that we've chosen to do. But just think for a second of how likely our active duty military are to be injured, to be hurt, to have cardiac arrest, to be knocked unconscious. Those numbers, again, 40,298 wounded in action. That doesn't even count for people that are on base that are getting injured like myself. And then right now, as we speak, over 500,000 are diagnosed with PTSD in the last 13 years. That's about, some numbers say 13%, some say 20, and as high as 30% of active duty veterans or veterans that have just come off active duty have PTSD. So there is a fear. I told you the story about the gentleman sleepwalking. I told you the story about the gentleman who was folding his clothes or not folding his clothes. There is a genuine fear, obviously, about being kicked out of the military if you share something like this. What would have changed my life is if they knew that obviously that I had flatlined. There is no denying that. If they had said, they don't have to justify it, they don't have to sit there and console me, but if they said, if you experience something like this, there is a resource for you, and here's the website you can visit and get help. That would have changed my life at that moment. That would have been 12 years of not having to keep this a secret, to hide this, to keep all these feelings in and being able to help people. So that's what I would love to see. Ultimate goal, I think a lot of people like Chuck and Howie and Bill and Diane and Lilia, I think the ultimate goal is education. For the active duty military, for the VA, for veteran service organizations to know about these things. And again, they don't have to, it's going to be a long time before they really spend a lot of effort, trying to embrace this, I feel. However, all they have to do is say, I understand what you went through, visit this website or reach out to this person and they can help you. That would be life-changing. And so that's my goal. So Chuck, if you have anything to add.
Well, Chase, yeah, I certainly don't want to cut you off, and your spirit for your mission is very tangible to all of us. Certainly you can talk about what we do with ISGO is bringing people into this platform to share. And for the last 4 Sundays, we have a sharing group on Sunday night. Is sold out every seat. The people who have come into that meeting And one gentleman, just a short story, was, let's see, it was 2 Sundays ago, and he had a drug problem in his life, and he got both the flus, and together those combined to drop his blood pressure, and he's went to the hospital and flatlined and was out of his body watching what was going on below him. And then they resuscitated him, he's right back in. So that was really a very short, anecdotal kind of typical near-death front end kind of experience. He didn't go to the depth of that you maybe went. But when he left the hospital, he had no resources, and he went off by himself and was in a remote, hotel or something, and depressed, and he hung himself. And he said he felt his neck snap, and the cleaning lady found him obviously in enough time that he was rushed to the hospital. And he then, in his NDE, the second one, met Jesus, and certainly had that transforming experience of that, in which he felt instantly from his NDE he was healed of his drug problem.
Yeah.
Anyhow, when he came to our group 2 weeks ago, he had only been within 90 days of having those experiences. He didn't have, and he came through the camera and was obviously needing to talk, just to share this incredible reality for him. And then to find out that there were others there that said, yes, we're here, we understand. That was so healing for him. You could tell that was immediately. So what you were saying earlier, not having anybody to tell it to is such a isolating thing, all alone. He did try to talk to some healthcare providers, and he wound up in a formal counseling program. They didn't direct him to any place that would help him because they weren't trained to do that. And that's the mission of IANS. Is this what we're doing right now? Education, sharing your experiences like yours. So let's go to the questions. There's quite a few of them now.
I will say, if it wasn't for that counselor that the Wounded Warrior Project assigned me at Cornerstone, Angela Whittingall is her name. I asked her towards the end of our 12-week, I said, if your husband had not had a near-death experience, would you have asked me that? And she was upset. She said, I don't think I would have. And, it was because of her husband himself having that experience that she asked me, which really, again, it's connecting the dots, as I say, is, I was assigned to her for a reason. There was a reason why her and I were connected. But again, there's, that doesn't mean that the rest of the therapists there might yet be familiar with it. So it's all it takes is one person to believe you that can change everything for you.
Absolutely. Because there's a little more that we want to go into here in a bit about after effects, but for that immediate after effect, that immediate connection that says that was real.
Yeah.
Trust what you feel. You're not alone. There are others. Maybe your family won't know. There's a 70% divorce rate.
Yeah.
Because you're a different person. You have a different view of the world. And it's very understandable at some level that, well, it's a lifelong process too.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But coming back out of it, I can imagine it's very tough. It's very tough for other people, and maybe to understand that have a heart, skeptics,
And for those with a military connection, we do have a military experience sharing group. It's, I think, on the second Sundays. Go to the ISGO website and find an event, and they'll be listed there in, date order. So please join us. And a couple of the people I know who are submitting the questions there, one who's very close to you, I'll give you his connection later.
Okay.
He's in Palm Bay, Florida,
Oh, really?
so
Best
right
friends.
around the corner, I guess. I mean,
Yeah, close enough, right?
yeah. And he has an experiential relationship to just what you've been talking about. All right. The first question I think is very common. What was Jesus like? What was his appearance? How did you react to knowing
Yeah.
that was Jesus?
So I can tell you, it was not what I grew up thinking Jesus looked like. It was not who maybe I saw in the Catholic Church or on, on mantles. It was, I think a lot of pictures or even when you go to church, you see Jesus in obviously not to get too deep, but maybe in the worst part of his physical body. So you see him when he's hurting, and um, it was totally different for me. And so I can tell you that when he turned around, there was zero doubt that it was Jesus right in front of me. He didn't say his name, but he didn't look like anything that I had grown up thinking that he looked like. So it's hard to describe that, right? Where you're meeting somebody for the first time, but and it's not what you thought they looked like, but it's them. So he had these incredible like green eyes. He had his short hair, curly, and it was just big smile. And for me, he had a personality. He had a sense of humor. It was just this comical look of smiling where I'm looking over at myself as a child, and I kind of look back at him, like doing the double take, like Sherlock Holmes style, going, wait a minute. And he's smiling at me like he's watching the gears turn, kind of like, do you get it now? And it was such a beautiful, warm feeling that I got from him. I had watched the movie on the cruise ship, which is actually why I shared my story with my now wife. We watched Heaven is for Real, and at the end they reference this 8-year-old artist, female girl artist, named,
Yeah.
and I say her name wrong, so I apologize. Her name's Akiane, or Akiane. So I think I pronounced it wrong. Um, and so I looked it up, and I again just get goosebumps again looking at it. The tears that came over me, and my wife kind of just sat there and put her hand on me. The drawing that she did called The Prince of Peace when she was 8 years old is, to me, a photograph of the man I met in the garden. So it is a complete, exact photo, even though she drew it, from her heart. So that was my experience with him. He had a sense of humor. He was funny. He was, I guess you could say in a sense sarcastic, like, come on, like, figure it out. And that's what he looked like. Was that I would look up that painting.
Okay. Sort of a stereotypical thing is wondering if you had a life review. I guess, yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't say I had a life review. I feel like the closest thing to my life review was watching myself as a child, the most happy, pure version of myself, at 4 years old, playing in the garden. So as far as going back, and kind of reviewing maybe past mistakes, and I didn't have that. As I meditate now, which is something I've taken up since all of this, in the last 3 months, there are instances where I can kind of go back and kind of again retrace steps and connect the dots back. But during my actual NDE experience in 2008, I didn't have a life review.
There's one person, this should be quick answers. What was the name of the book from the cruise ship?
Yeah, it's in life, in death, he leads, by Bruce Blair. I believe it's available on Amazon. And then if you go to my website, I actually put it in there as well. I think a link to it. So if it's easier to check it out, but it's called In Life, in Death, He Leads by Bruce Blair. It's a small book that again, I keep it on my desk every single day.
Okay, one of the things that a good number of experiencers talk about is we kind of lump under the label after effects.
Mhm.
Do you feel any connection to that term and what you see as different in your life?
Absolutely. So again, dating all the way back to 2008, coming back from that, I always felt, and again, I didn't read books. I didn't do a lot of, research on what happened to me, but I would make comments to people. There was a lot of intuition of this is about to happen, or you got to be careful around this friend. There was a lot of a feeling of, being more in tune maybe with other things that were going on, not just the visual or verbal. It felt like there was another sense there of really strong intuition. And I feel like everybody has intuition, but when you're 100% right, it might be a little bit something different, right? We might have to relabel it if you're batting 100. So that was, I would say, 25%. Because I suppressed so much for so long. I would even say to my wife, this was again just years ago. I would say, my angels are saying this, or if she would be afraid of something, I would say the angels are saying it's going to be fine. I didn't know where that was coming from. I thought if I said that to anybody else besides her, people would think that I was crazy. But again, I was always accurate, and it was always good information but I didn't know where it was coming from. It just felt like it was coming through me. So much as like, her mother in Australia was really going through a tough medical time. And I said, it's vertigo. You just got to go tell her to get checked for vertigo. And she said, oh, she went to the doctor and it's going to be this. And she's really, and I said, I'm telling you, it's vertigo. And they're in Australia. And sure enough, she got like the crystal thing done for vertigo, and she's been great ever since. So there's been, that's just one kind of example. So since coming out now, I would say now it's at 100%. Diana kind of said it's kind of like turning the on sign at a restaurant and not knowing how to turn it off. So my intuition, the abilities and gifts that I've kind of been hiding for a long time have come out, where I'm able, I feel like, really help people by sharing messages. If we went to a farmer's market in December and we bought a gentleman handmade things with clay, and we bought something from him, and I walked back around again and I said, oh, I got to tell him something. My wife said, just tell him. And so I walked back up to him and I said, I got to tell you, there's people here that are incredibly proud of you. They're so proud of you. And they just want to say, whatever you're saving, you're doing this to save up for something specific. And at the time, the guy was kind of smiling and nodding. And once I said, you're saving for something very specific, his head turned sideways, like, who are you? What do you know? And I said, I don't know what I'm doing. I said to him, I said, I don't know what I'm doing right now, but feels like a man and a woman, and they want to tell you that you're on the right path. And his eyes welled up with tears, and I said goodbye to him, and that was it. And I just walked away feeling that was incredible, because maybe that man was on the brink of quitting what he was doing, and he needed to hear that. So since doing that, it's very similar. We're now going to stores and interacting with people online. My intuition has gotten just, I would say, incredibly strong. And I'm learning more about that, because this is all very new. So I'm learning how to label it, and I do plan on actually going back to school now, to actually take up like holistic arts to try to help veterans. So that is kind of my new career path that I'm choosing to embark on. Literally next Wednesday is my first day of going to get my bachelor's in it. So I am labeling it as being in tune with the guides here with me, being in tune with everything up there within myself. I'm getting better at understanding it, but it's been beautiful.
Well, it's certainly, you're a very sensitive individual, and you're very aware. And that is, like you said, it's like the light goes on, and you need to be sure that you save something for you, so you're not run over by this. But our president, Jan Holden, did with some others, a research project in which they established over 50% of the near-death experiences in their study had unsolicited mediumship contact.
Right.
Those from the other side trying to get a message to somebody they didn't know. And, there's authentication, like you felt with that gentleman in the, his shop.
Absolutely. I had and within that week, I didn't share that story, but real quick, I had a bad experience. A girl had gone missing that I had known from Virginia Beach. And this was, again, the same week of finding my family, finding Diane, finding Lilia. I had a bad experience, and I went on Facebook and I said, I don't know what I'm feeling right now, but I feel like I've turned something on and I can't turn it off. And that's actually how I met Diana. Um, and we got on the phone. She's in California. We got on the phone right away, and she's like, we'll figure that you got to protect yourself. You got to learn how to, not allow yourself to take on other people's emotions. So, it's so important for sure.
Yes, yeah, very good. There's tremendous number of comments here that just accolades, and we'll try to get you copies of these.
Awesome.
We take some time looking through them. So let's just try to focus on the questions. One is kind of an interesting question. I'll let it go for itself. Do you feel more religious?
That's a great question. And I took a deep breath when I said that. I had my wife's best friend is very religious. She's very Christian. And she asked me, as I shared this story with her just within the last couple months, she said, do you feel like, these messages that maybe you're going to start sharing with other people and these gifts that you have, is it coming from Jesus? And she was worried because there are, there's obviously stigmas out there of other sources, right? And my response to her, I think, kind of answered it to her. And I said, I felt like Jesus never left me in the first place. She asked if I was a born again Christian. And I said, I felt like it never left me. I pray every night. Whenever I see 11:11, I say the same prayer. I wear dog tags with the cross. Josh 1:9b. I'm not good at quoting scripture. I wouldn't say that I am your perfect Catholic, of course, in any way. So as far as to answer your question directly, is I feel more religious in the sense of I pray every night. I pray all throughout the day, and I know who I'm praying to now. So I do feel more religious. I do have a hard time, though, just being totally transparent. I do have a hard time trying to find kind of my home. If I go back to a Catholic church down the road from me, or if I find somewhere else, because when you feel like and I think that's kind of like the after effects that Chuck you were getting to, when you feel like something that maybe isn't written in a book, or maybe that maybe other people might not agree with, you have a hard time to go, why does this guy know, like somebody might point to me and say, this guy didn't go to school for, he's not a pastor, he's not a reverend, who does he think he is? And I think that's a fear of not going, why I didn't share it immediately with people in church was they might look at me and go, he curses, like he's wild, Chase is entertaining, he works in nightclubs, why, who does he think he is to share such a beautiful experience, which hasn't been the case. But again, to answer your question directly, I've never not felt religious, and I feel more connected. The more I accept my near-death experience, I feel more connected to heaven.
Yeah, I like to use the words are too difficult to really encompass it, because they all are qualified by our own history and culture. But
That's true.
To me, it's the difference between being spiritual and being religious in the doctrinal sense. It's something within you that is so expressed in who you are and what you want to be. And when you're talking to somebody and it's going to be difficult for them to hear your message, you're empathic and you're sympathetic to that. How do you convey this in a way that is more apt to be receptive?
Right.
It needs to be heard, but how do you say it in a way that's not, doing
exactly
just
right.
what you were afraid of?
If I caught a fish this big, right, and I tell you, Chuck, because you love fishing, the story is identical. It's still a truthful story that I caught a fish this big to you, right? And then to somebody who's never fished before, if I tell them the story, it would be the same exact story of catching the fish, but I would have to tell it differently, to that audience. So I agree. You have to know who you're talking to when you share these stories. And if somebody is very religious, you have to make sure, and be, of that, that they might not believe you.
And maybe how I can put this next answer in the chat box. Somebody wanted you to repeat your website.
Yeah, it's Chase, Chase, and then my middle name is Skylar, SKYLAR.com. So chaseskylar.com. And then right from there, you can click near death experience, and I have quite a few links for not only just veterans, everybody.
Okay. See, we're still going pretty good here with some time. So do you feel there's a direction that you're going to take in your work life that might be changing now that you're on this path?
Yeah, I found it when I came back from the Wounded Warrior Project. Obviously, a lot of things changed for me dramatically. Again, coming out of that spiritual closet really hit me hard. So with my actual day job, it became a lot harder to concentrate and feel like I had a higher purpose now that I finally, I'd been waiting 12 years for the sign. So my really genuinely, when I say this, my mission, my goal now moving forward is to help not only veterans, but to help other people, heal. So first, trying to educate more people about near-death experiences, trying to focus on veterans, trying to get my way in to the VA and all these, veteran organizations to try to help people, and then just helping people one-on-one, trying to help them realize that, you don't need a near-death experience to go and kind of chase your light. And again, I have no regrets when I say, money was tight so many times in my life, but I got to do stuff that I genuinely said, when I was a little kid, I wanted to learn how to do that. I'm going to go out and learn how to do it. I might hurt myself. I might, this and that, but having that near-death experience taught me that there are so many different ways. Therapy has its place to help people. Medication in a lot of instances can help people, the right people with the right medication. And then there's that other sector of, some people might call it life coaching, that people need just to kind of get that kick in their butt and realize that you can be happy despite any pain you're going through. So my life mission, and I did mention I start school this coming Wednesday here in Orlando for holistic healing arts degree, which I didn't know existed, but I found it. So.
And I got a prompt here that for those people who might be interested in the sharing groups, we talked about the military group or the Sunday evening sharing group. We're also starting one for Sunday mornings that will be more accessible to the East Coast and Western Europe, because we've had a couple of requests from one from the UK and one from Denmark. So the seeds are being planted. This process is getting out there, and this is a global community, and we can get together here. But those sharing groups are free, so people can join if you can find a seat, because they're filling up. So please don't take a seat if you're not going to be there. So obviously you can only get so many people on camera to share, and these platforms are great, but if you get 100 people, then it's not as intimate as it can be. It's one of those trade-offs. We just have to do the best we can. And there'll be different theme groups, which the theme groups may speak more to individual interests. There's a caregiver sharing group, which is for people who have been in a situation of caring for another who is close to transition or has had near-death experience and needs, somebody else there because physical disabilities or whatever. Caregivers carry a lot of weight, a lot of work, and they need to get together and talk with one another. So all those opportunities, this platform is just, also heaven sent. I feel so blessed to be part of this, to meet folks like yourself and to help this message go around the world. Is there something that you would like to close with as we're coming to the end here?
I just, anybody who's listened and has stayed on, I appreciate you. And again, everybody here, and if you don't know a veteran personally, if you don't have one in your family, you're going to come across one. And maybe they didn't have a near-death experience themselves, but they might know somebody who has. So I just ask that you keep this a tiny piece of it, somewhere in the back of your head to hopefully share with somebody when that time comes, and just educate people. Because my grandmother always said education is the key to world peace, right? The more we all know, and the more we share with each other, the happier all of us are going to be. So really that in closing, I just appreciate you all. This is the longest I've spent sharing my story, the most people I've shared my story with. And Chuck and Howie, you couldn't have made it more comfortable. Diane, obviously, Diane Corcoran, Lilia, Diana Bamford, even the counselors going back that have helped me. It's been only 3.5 months. It's been a quick ride, and I'm looking forward to more. I'm looking forward to hopefully being a part of the conference in September, whether it's in person or not. And hopefully I have a big update, that we've kind of kicked down the door a little bit and started to help more veterans.
You got it. And this community is growing, by the day. Do want to emphasize the Bruce Grayson event, what it means to all of us. There is a program if we really need to get the healthcare community on board. There was a question I missed I was going to go back to about healthcare response. Maybe that's a quick question for you to talk to. What was the variation, and was there any where you felt like they just really was not comfortable for you around the people that should have been there to answer the question if they knew about this phenomenon?
Absolutely. I mean, I tried alluding to it a couple of times, and you could, again, the empathetic feelings, the empath type feelings that you get from people when they shut down, when their energy completely shifts. But I've tried sharing it with doctors before at the VA. They've said, oh, we saw, there is a mention, by the way, I said that there's a couple of that my charts are missing for those days, but there obviously is references to it further on in my chart. And I've tried to share, my heart is this, and, and I said, I had this experience, and immediately they change, their demeanor changes, and they shut down and they don't want to talk about it. There's obviously so many doctors that are a part of IANS now, that are able to hopefully, like Dr. Grayson, and there's so much more. But I do think that, the more and more medical professionals, because I feel like if you are a science-driven person, your first gut reaction is, if I can't prove it, I don't want to believe it. And so that's what I've encountered. So again, what would have changed it for me is just having, just knowing, I mean, even if there was a pamphlet, I kind of joke about that, but if there was a pamphlet that said, did you have an experience, while you're in the hospital, here's some resources for you. That might've been all I needed. But it all comes down to education, and it takes us supporters, even skeptics. Skeptics are the best, right? Because you have believers, but skeptics are the ones that we can prove that this is real to. And those are the ones that hopefully go out and share, the message of IANS and everything else. And then doctors, the medical profession, therapists,